Greetings and Happy New Year's to all of my star seeds, light workers, and people who are steadily working towards positive change for themselves. All right? How you doing? Happy New Year. It's 2025. And I just wanted to come with a brief synopsis. Excuse me if you hear any squeaking sounds, any dogs barking or anything. There's real life going on around me. But we're going to focus on the word because I just have some things that I would like to share with you guys. So welcome to an episode of Healing Wisdom / Real Talk with me, Empress Oracle, your favorite realist and of course, sexiest spiritual advisor. And I'm here to share with you guys some of the things that I have learned in this past year while learning how to cope and communicate healthily after being diagnosed with PTSD. You know, PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, for those who didn't know. But on behalf of Starseed Galactic Federation, I have been given access to this knowledge to be able to heal myself and others from my Akashic records. This is something that I've had to do in previous lifetimes, and I'm here to share it. Each one teach one. So any use or reproduction of the information that you receive from this video without giving proper acknowledgement will result in instant karma for the plagiarizing parties or individuals. Okay? I deserve credit for my work. And you guys who heal from the healing wisdom that I give you, you deserve credit for that also. So just in case nobody told you last year, great job. And I'm proud of you. Now let's get started. So 2 things that I learned personally to correlate with PTSD as far as myself and also seeing others' responses to traumatic events is that crashing out or jumping to conclusions. A lot of people just feel like that's just a personality trait or it's like a toxic trait or something. But actually, those 2 are also traits of PTSD. Sometimes people, you have a trauma response whenever something happens, a fight or flight. A lot of times people are in scenarios where you can't just flee, and you learn how to defend yourself by either crashing out or jump to conclusions because you're so used to seeing certain patterns and what happens whenever you see certain patterns that sometimes, you have a tendency to jump to conclusions, especially if you see those patterns in somebody who doesn't know that you have PTSD. Exactly. They're going to unintentionally sometimes trigger you or push certain buttons, and you have to know the first step is realizing, that you have a problem or that something is triggering you. And before you just start crashing out, you have to just take a step back and be like, well, why do I feel this way? Because you don't always want to snap on everybody. In this day and age, people are just beyond road rage. Everybody has some kind of mental health issue or trigger. And if everybody just responds by crashing out or jump to conclusions, we're going to make ourselves extinct. As if we don't have enough issues with things as is. So we have to be the bigger people and we have to be aware of what those triggers are, what causes us to crash out, right? And I'm not going to say that you're going to be able to control every scenario where you're triggered. Some people have quicker tempers and haven't quite learned, whether it's through personal experience or repercussions, that you can't just flip out. But you live and you learn. And I say after the first, maybe second incident, you'd be able to realize, okay, this is a trigger of mine. Let me not crash out. Let me just take a pause. Let me count to 10. Let me walk away or whatever. Sometimes you have to catch yourself in situations that you least expect that. And that's the part of the healing process because, the first step is realizing that you have that issue, as I said. Now, I definitely believe that hindsight is 20/20, and I learned to recognize that a lot. And hey, I'm here to teach you guys. Also, too, a trauma response, that's actions that are more in the defense of self-preparation of a traumatic event to happen, because that will happen. Let's just say that you're used to getting into a series of toxic relationships with people, and you always see the red flags first before you realize the relationship is toxic. But sometimes you choose to ignore those because they're suppressed or they're minor. As time goes on, it's going to become a big issue. You have to pay attention to things like that. And the repetition of things like that irritate you or cause you traumas, that's how you get PTSD. And you won't even realize it. Then you'll just be crashing out on everybody. Learn from triggers so that when you recognize the red flags, you are proactive instead of reliving a series of traumatic events. Yes, That's exactly what I just said before. But, I took these notes, I channeled these notes, and now as I'm speaking, I'm channeling it again. So excuse me if I repeat certain things. I'm just really trying to drive certain points home. You have to recognize this stuff, because after a certain amount of upsets, you have to be able to hold yourself accountable and say, hey, I should realize this pattern by now. Otherwise, people are going to insult your intelligence the same way that you insult yourself, the same way that you insulted your intelligence by continuing to relive the thing that gave you PTSD. And a lot of people have PTSD, and because they don't have proper health insurance, they haven't been medically diagnosed with PTSD, but you can tell. You can tell. Sometimes you just pay attention to people's patterns of behaviors, of how they live and stuff. You'll be able to realize it, the way that they respond to certain things. That might be a trigger for them. They just don't choose to just crash out anytime somebody mentions cotton candy, for example. Maybe something traumatic happens. Sometimes you have to ask why. And sometimes people don't realize things within themselves. It takes if you care about somebody and you see it, you have to say something and help them to recognize those patterns so that they can work on it and become a better person. Never have too much pride or too much ego that you can't admit when you have an issue, or you can't admit when you need to look more into your mental health or your patterns and stuff. Never feel like you're too good, because this life that everybody's going through on planet Earth, this is for us to learn certain things, to evolve and become better. So if you can't handle telling yourself or facing yourself in the mirror and checking yourself, you're definitely not gonna be able to handle what other people pointed out. So you have to just work on that. Never be too proud to change. Okay? And as long as you're changing for the better, it really shouldn't matter what anybody around you thinks. Okay? If you used to hang with a bunch of crash outs and stuff, hey, if you realize before your other crash outs that certain things are triggers and stuff, perhaps be the bigger person in this incident where all of y'all might crash out. One of them might step back and be like, you know what? I like the way you handled that. I'm going to try that. Each one teach one. Okay? Everybody is not the same. So don't put yourself or others in a box. And I'm saying that because certain things don't trigger everybody, right? And something that might be a trigger for you might be something that somebody else might look at as real minor and simple, but to you it's a big deal. And that's you. Instead of just going off on people who don't realize that, take some time out and explain that. Everybody is not an empath. Everybody's not used to feeling other people's feelings or reading people's feelings. A lot of people just be in their own world. You have to realize that. So instead of just getting violent and riled up, communicate. All right? Just communicate. Give yourself and others opportunities to learn and grow. If you see no change within a reasonable amount of time, then you know to move on before long-lasting trauma can occur. So what that is saying is, after you see the red flags and you have addressed the red flags more than a few times, which means I'm going to say more than twice, depending on the severity of what it is or how much it triggers you, and you don't see that person making a conscious effort to change, because nobody's perfect, so people are still going to make mistakes, but you can tell when somebody's trying, right? So if the same thing keeps happening, you have to remove yourself from those triggers, whether it's a person, a place, or a thing, and you have to be able to communicate that, because sometimes you can't make certain actions without explaining why. Right? You have to be able to healthily and positively communicate why. That helps people to understand, even if not with you, but moving forward with somebody else. Like, hey, I don't know what this person has been through or what may trigger them. Let me look into that, and vice versa. That's all I'm saying. Those are some of the main things that I learned within this past year after being diagnosed with PTSD. And the crazy part about it is, I always knew that I had PTSD. But, what I didn't realize is that it can spill over into every other aspect of your life besides the person that traumatized you, if that makes sense, right? So if a person traumatized you doing a particular thing, you can have PTSD outside of your relationship with that person. Say if somebody brings up the same thing or something, you have to be aware of those things, because sometimes people have a tendency to compartmentalize, did I say that right? Compartmentalize their grief and their trauma and their pain. And you have to be honest with yourself. If you can't be real with yourself and say, hey, this shit fucked me up, I'm messed up about this, then who can? You have to be able to recognize and identify your trauma, babes, so you can get better. So I know I may have went around in a circle, but I was channeling this information, and on behalf of Starseed Galactic Federation, to all my Starseeds, Indigo children, light workers, change makers, have a blessed, wonderful, and happy new year. I'm glad we had this talk, and I'll see you later, okay? I love you all.